In this tutorial, we'll show you how to set up the approval process in Oracle Financial Consolidation and Closed Cloud. To set up the approvals process, you perform these tasks. Configure approval unit hierarchies, assign approval unit hierarchies to scenarios and time periods, and start approval units for a scenario and time period. Let's start by configuring an approval unit hierarchy. To create or modify hierarchies, select Approval Unit from the Workflow section in the Navigator. An approval unit hierarchy identifies entities to be included in the approvals process. You must be a service administrator to configure hierarchies. A default approval unit hierarchy named Total Geography is added when the application is created. You can modify the default hierarchy or create your own. You can have more than one hierarchy. For example, you could have separate hierarchies for monthly and quarterly approvals. I'll create a hierarchy named Approvals North America. Use the Enable Approvals option to define a default selection of entities to include in the hierarchy. I'll choose Custom and then select Entities by selecting the North America parent and entering the generations to include. Templates are provided for two types of approval process. If you select the consolidation template, the owner assigned to each approval unit can lock and unlock its data without going through a review process. If you select the consolidation bottom-up template, approval units must be reviewed and approved before their data can be locked. I'll select the consolidation bottom-up template. The Primary and Sub-Hierarchy tab displays the default selection of entities you specified using Enable Approvals. You can edit the default selection. I don't need to make any edits, so I'll click Assign Owners. Use the Owners column to assign the initial owner for each entity. I'll make Amy the owner for North America, Barry the owner for USA and Canada, and Carol the owner of the USA child entities. Because I didn't assign owners to the children of Canada, Barry will be assigned as the owner. The owners of the ancestors of an entity are added to the promotional path automatically. In this example, Amy and Barry are added to the promotional path for operations. Only the last user in the promotional path, in this case Amy, can approve and lock data for an approval unit. You can add reviewers to the promotional path if needed. I'll add Betty as a reviewer to the operations entity. You can assign groups as owners or as reviewers so that anyone in the group can act on the approval unit. If you want additional users to be notified when action is taken for an approval unit, you can add them to the Notify These Users column. I'm finished working on this approval unit for now, so I'll click Save. After you configure an approval unit hierarchy, you assign it to scenarios, years, and periods. Only one approval unit hierarchy can be assigned to each combination of scenario, year, and period. I'll create approval units for the actual scenario for all periods of 2019. Select Manage Approvals from the Workflow section of the Navigator to manage the approval process for each period. You must be a service administrator to manage the approval process. Select Tree View from the View menu to view the approval unit hierarchy. The initial approval status for all entities is Not Started, with no owner. You cannot promote, approve, or lock data for approval units that are not started. Starting a parent starts all of its descendants as well. When you start an approval unit that uses the Consolidation Bottom-Up template, its status changes to Under Review and an owner is assigned. Once the status changes to Under Review, the data becomes read-only for all users other than the current owner. When you start an approval unit that uses the Consolidation template, the status changes to Unlocked. Click Exclude for an entity to revert it and its descendant status to Not Started with no owner. In this tutorial, we showed you how to set up the approval process in Oracle Financial Consolidation and Closed Cloud. To learn more, visit cloud.oracle.com.